Stop whatever you are doing and listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not meant to entertain you, comfort you, or inspire you for a moment and then fade away. This is a direct interruption to the way you have been thinking, waiting, and silently doubting. If you have ever felt that something is so close yet refuses to appear, if you have tried again and again only to feel stuck in delay, then understand this: the problem has never been time, effort, or luck. The problem has been the invisible position you have been standing in without realizing it. Most people believe change requires struggle, repetition, and force. They believe life must be chased, convinced, or earned through exhaustion. But reality does not respond to effort. It responds to identity. It answers the inner agreement you live from, not the desire you speak aloud. Every moment, without exception, the world reflects what you silently accept as true about yourself. And the moment that acceptance changes, the reflection has no choice but to change with it. This is why some people experience sudden breakthroughs, while others wait for years using the same techniques. It is not because they are special, lucky, or chosen. It is because they stopped asking and started assuming. They stopped hoping and started knowing. They moved from wanting to having, not outwardly, but inwardly. And the instant that shift happened, time collapsed. What you are about to hear is not theory, and it is not faith in something outside of you. It is an inner action so simple that the mind will try to dismiss it. But understand this clearly: simplicity is the signature of truth. You are not here to learn how to get something. You are here to remember how creation actually works, how reality listens, and why your inner state has always been the deciding factor. So listen slowly. Do not rush. Do not argue. Let these words land beyond the surface of thought. Because if you truly hear what is being said, you will realize that the door you have been knocking on has never been locked. You have been standing on the wrong side of your own assumption. And the moment that changes, everything else must follow. Assumption creates reality, the invisible decision that shapes everything. Everything you are experiencing right now is the result of an assumption you are living from, whether you are aware of it or not. This is not philosophy, not motivation, and not optimism dressed up as truth. It is a precise inner law. Life does not respond to your wishes, your affirmations, or even your repeated actions. It responds to what you have already accepted as normal, possible, and true for you. The world you see is not happening to you, it is happening from you. And the moment you truly understand this, you stop trying to change circumstances and begin changing the only thing that ever mattered: your inner agreement with reality. An assumption is not a loud thought. It is not something you say once and forget. An assumption is a quiet conclusion. It is the sentence you live by without speaking. It is what you expect when no one is watching. It is what you feel is just how things are. When someone assumes life is slow, opportunities arrive slowly. When someone assumes they are always chosen last, life rearranges to confirm it. When someone assumes things work out for them, reality bends in subtle but consistent ways to prove them right. The world is not judging you, it is agreeing with you. Most people believe they must first see proof before they believe. But creation works in the opposite direction. Belief comes first, evidence follows. Assumption precedes experience. This is why waiting for signs keeps you stuck. Waiting is an assumption. It says, I do not have it yet. And life, being faithful, echoes back delay. The moment you stop waiting and start being the one for whom it is already settled, the entire rhythm of events begins to change. Not dramatically at first, but inevitably. Understand this clearly: you do not assume with words, you assume with identity. Identity is not who you want to be, it is who you feel yourself to be when you are not trying. It is the emotional posture you return to again and again. If you feel like someone who struggles, you will find struggle. If you feel like someone who is always almost there, life will keep you almost there. But if you feel like someone who expects alignment, resolution, and ease, the world reorganizes around that expectation. This is why effort alone fails so many people. They work hard, repeat techniques, and stay consistent, yet nothing changes. Why? Because effort without inner shift is just decoration on the same assumption. You can visualize wealth while still assuming scarcity. You can affirm confidence while still identifying as insecure. And reality will always follow the deeper layer, not the surface ritual. The inner story is the command. The outer action is secondary. The most powerful assumptions are the ones you no longer question. When something feels obvious to you, you do not check for it. You do not worry about it. You do not look for reassurance. That relaxed certainty is the creative force. This is why forcing belief never works. Force implies doubt, and doubt delays manifestation. What works is naturalness. When the desired state feels ordinary, when it feels like, of course, the assumption is complete. You may ask, how do I change an assumption that feels so real? The answer is simpler than the mind expects. You do not fight the old assumption. Fighting gives it attention. You simply stop feeding it and begin occupying a new inner position. This begins with awareness. Notice what you assume about time, about money, about love, about yourself. Notice the phrases that repeat silently. It's hard. It takes long. People don't show up for me. Nothing changes fast. These are not facts, they are habits. To change an assumption, you must experience the feeling of the opposite as real now. Not emotionally intense, not dramatic, but quietly accepted. Ask yourself, how would I feel if this were already resolved? Then stay with that feeling not as imagination, but as a decision that this is now the state you live from. You are not pretending, you are selecting. This is where most people stop too soon. They touch the feeling briefly, then return to the old identity because it feels familiar. Familiarity is powerful, but it is not truth. You must persist gently, calmly, without strain. Persistence is not repetition of words, it is loyalty to a state. Each time you return to the feeling of already having, already being, already knowing, you weaken the old assumption and strengthen the new one. Reality must reorganize when the inner agreement changes. It has no choice. The outer world is not creative, it is reflective. It mirrors the dominant state you occupy. This is why results sometimes appear suddenly. It is not sudden creation, it is delayed reflection. The inner shift happened earlier. The mirror simply caught up. You do not need to control circumstances. You do not need to plan how it will happen. How belongs to the world of effects, not causes. Your only responsibility is to assume the end. When the end is assumed, the path reveals itself naturally. Opportunities feel coincidental. Meetings seem random. Timing appears lucky. But none of it is accidental. It is alignment responding to a new command. Be careful what you repeatedly accept as just how life is. That phrase is the lock on the door. The moment you question it, the door loosens. The moment you replace it with a new assumption, the door opens. Life is far more obedient than you have been taught. It listens constantly. It does not skip a command. It does not delay out of cruelty. It reflects with precision. Once you understand that assumption creates reality, responsibility returns to you, but so does freedom. You are no longer a victim of timing, people, or conditions. You are the chooser of states, and states harden into facts. This is not about blaming yourself for the past. It is about recognizing your power in the present. Start small if you must. Assume ease in one area. Assume speed in one outcome. Assume support instead of resistance. Let the assumption feel normal. Let it settle. Let it become your default. Then watch how life responds without force, without struggle, without explanation. This is the truth most people overlook. Reality is not moved by desire, but by decision. Not a spoken decision, but an inner one. When you decide who you are, life decides what happens. And it never argues with you. Feeling is the creative power, the silent force that brings everything into form. Everything in your life moves not because you think, but because you feel. Thought is the messenger, but feeling is the command. Feeling is the seal that impresses an idea upon reality. This is where most people misunderstand creation. They try to change life by changing words, routines, or behaviors, yet nothing truly shifts because the emotional state beneath those actions remains the same. Life does not respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you feel is already true. Feeling is not decoration. It is the creative power itself. When you feel something as real, the body accepts it as fact. And once the body accepts it, the mind stops questioning it. At that point, reality has received a clear instruction. This is why fleeting thoughts do nothing, but sustained feeling changes everything. A thought can pass through the mind like a cloud, but a feeling settles into the nervous system. It becomes a state, and states are what the world reflects. Most people spend their lives feeling what they do not want while thinking about what they do want. They feel anxious while imagining success. They feel lacking while affirming abundance. They feel lonely while visualizing connection. And because feeling is the creative power, the feeling always wins. The world reflects the emotional truth, not the verbal desire. This is why so many techniques appear to fail. The technique is not the issue. The feeling underneath it is. Feeling is not emotion in the dramatic sense. It is not excitement, intensity, or force. Feeling is inner knowing. It is the quiet sense of this is real. It is the calm confidence of certainty. When something is truly accepted, it does not create emotional fireworks, it creates peace. That peace is the signal that the creative act is complete. Think of something you already know is true in your life, your name, your age, the place you live. Notice how neutral it feels. You do not get excited about it. You do not fear it disappearing. You simply know. That neutrality is powerful. That is the same feeling that creates results when applied to a desired state. When the desire feels as ordinary as a fact, the creative work is done. This is why forcing emotion never works. You cannot create by excitement because excitement implies anticipation. Anticipation implies waiting. Waiting implies lack, and lack is what gets created. What creates is relief. Relief says, it's settled. Relief removes the strain. Relief relaxes the system. And a relaxed system is receptive. The moment you feel relief about something not yet visible, you have stepped into the state of having. And having is the only state that produces having. You cannot get from wanting. You get from being. Feeling is the bridge between the inner and the outer. It translates the invisible into form. Here is where the inner discipline matters. Feelings are not caused by circumstances. Circumstances are caused by feelings. This reverses everything you were taught. You were trained to wait for permission to feel good. You were taught to feel happy when things improve, calm when problems disappear, confident when proof appears. But that sequence never produces change. The correct order is always feeling first, evidence second. To consciously create, you must learn to feel from the end, not about the end. Feeling about something keeps it distant. Feeling from it makes it present. When you feel from the end, you are not observing the desire, you are occupying it. You are no longer someone who wants, you are someone who remembers. The simplest way to do this is to ask one question: how would I feel if this were already done? Then do not visualize scenes endlessly. Do not force pictures. Simply notice the shift in the body. The shoulders may relax. The breath may deepen. The urgency may disappear. That physical response is the feeling you want to sustain. Now comes the most important part, staying loyal to that feeling without effort. You are not holding it tightly. You are returning to it gently. Each time the mind drifts back to worry or doubt, you do not panic. You simply return to the feeling of relief, certainty, and calm. This is persistence, not repetition, but residence. Feeling does not need time. Time exists only where doubt exists. When feeling is complete, time collapses. This is why some manifestations appear suddenly. The person stopped wavering emotionally. They stopped checking. They stopped waiting. They rested in knowing, and reality caught up. Understand this deeply. Whatever you feel consistently becomes familiar, and whatever becomes familiar becomes normal, and whatever feels normal becomes real. Reality does not question normal. It reproduces it. This is also why fear manifests so quickly. Fear is a feeling of certainty about an unwanted outcome. The body believes it. The mind rehearses it. Reality reflects it. Fear works because it uses the same law as creation, just directed unconsciously. When you reverse this and apply certainty to what you want instead of what you fear, the same speed applies. You are not asked to deny your senses. You are asked to stop letting them dictate your feeling. The senses report the past. Feeling determines the future. If you let the present appearance decide how you feel, you are always creating from yesterday. If you let your feeling decide what is true, you are creating ahead of time. This is inner leadership. You are not reacting, you are choosing. You are not suppressing emotions, you are selecting states. You are saying, this is the feeling I live from now. And the world, being obedient, rearranges accordingly. The more you practice feeling from fulfillment, the more natural it becomes. At first it may feel unfamiliar. That is normal. Unfamiliar does not mean false, it means new. Stay with it gently. Let it soak in. Let it become your baseline. Once it does, you will notice something subtle but powerful. You stop trying. Trying ends when feeling is complete. And when trying ends, things begin to move. This is the secret hidden in plain sight. Feeling is not a reaction to life. It is the cause of life. Choose it consciously, sustain it calmly, and let the mirror do what it has always done, reflect without argument. When you understand this, you stop chasing outcomes and start inhabiting states. And states, once occupied, inevitably become facts. The inner act is the only act where all change truly begins. Everything that appears to happen in the outer world is the final echo of something that first occurred within. Nothing moves outwardly unless it has already shifted inwardly. This is the truth that overturns the idea that action creates results. Action may rearrange surfaces, but it does not create reality. Creation happens in the unseen, in the silent inner act that no one else witnesses. Until that inner act is completed, the outer world can only repeat itself in different forms. Most people exhaust themselves trying to fix life from the outside. They push, plan, chase, negotiate, and struggle, believing effort will force change. But effort without inner alignment is resistance disguised as productivity. It is the attempt to compensate outwardly for what has not been accepted inwardly. This is why people can do everything right and still remain stuck. The inner act was never performed, so the outer actions had nothing new to express. The inner act is not visualization as entertainment, nor imagination used as escape. It is the deliberate assumption of a new state of being. It is the moment you inwardly accept something as done, real, and settled. That acceptance is the act. Nothing else is required. The outer world does not need to be persuaded, it needs to be informed. And it is informed only by inner conviction. Think carefully about how things already in your life came to be. At some point, consciously or unconsciously, you accepted them as normal. You stopped questioning them. You stopped worrying about whether they would happen. That inner neutrality signaled completion. From there, the outer world merely followed instructions. The same principle applies to everything you want to change now. The inner act always precedes outer movement. If you skip it, action becomes strained. You feel like you are swimming upstream. You feel tired without progress. But when the inner act is complete, outer action becomes effortless. Opportunities appear without force. Decisions feel obvious. Movement happens naturally. This is not coincidence, it is coherence. One of the biggest misunderstandings is the belief that imagination is fantasy. In truth, imagination is the workshop of reality. What you consistently imagine as real, especially when accompanied by feeling, sets the blueprint. The outer world builds according to that blueprint, not according to your words or intentions. This is why idle imagination, imagining failure, delay, rejection, creates exactly those experiences even when consciously undesired. The inner act requires one thing above all: acceptance. Not hope, not wishing, acceptance. Acceptance is the moment you stop arguing with the idea that something is already true. The moment you accept, the inner act is done. There is no strain in acceptance. There is no excitement either. There is calm certainty. This is why repetition without acceptance fails. You can repeat affirmations thousands of times and still feel uncertain. That uncertainty cancels the act. The inner act is not repetition, it is realization. It is the click of understanding when something shifts from maybe to of course. To perform the inner act consciously, you must withdraw attention from the present appearance. The present appearance is always the result of past assumptions. Treating it as final keeps you locked into repetition. Instead, you gently move attention inward and occupy the state that implies fulfillment. You do not deny the senses, you simply refuse to let them dictate truth. Ask yourself, if this were already resolved, how would I relate to life right now? How would I think? How would I feel? How would I move? Then begin to inhabit that version of yourself inwardly. You are not acting for others. You are not pretending outwardly. You are adjusting your inner posture. The inner act does not require time. Time is a byproduct of indecision. When the inner decision is final, time collapses. Delay exists only when the state is not fully occupied. This is why wavering creates long processes and certainty creates speed. The world is not slow, the inner acceptance is incomplete. Many people sabotage the inner act by constantly checking the outer world for confirmation. This checking reaffirms doubt. It says, I am not sure yet. And the outer world, faithful to that message, continues to reflect uncertainty. The moment you stop checking, you signal completion, and completion invites movement. You must understand that inner stillness is not passivity, it is authority. When you know, you do not rush. When you are certain, you do not chase. Stillness is the posture of power because it reflects inner agreement. The outer world responds to stillness faster than to struggle. This does not mean you take no outer action. It means action becomes inspired rather than forced. You act because it feels natural, not because you are afraid nothing will happen if you don't. Fear-driven action prolongs struggle. State-driven action accelerates results. The inner act is also the reason why changing circumstances without changing self concept never lasts. You can temporarily fix situations, but they will revert or recreate themselves if the inner state remains unchanged. Reality always returns you to the state you identify with. Change the state, and the pattern breaks permanently. This is not about control. It is about alignment. You are not forcing life to obey you. You are aligning with a state life already knows how to express. The outer world is skilled at execution. Your role is selection. Select the state inwardly and let life handle the details. The more you trust the inner act, the less you feel the need to manipulate outcomes. Manipulation is a sign of doubt. Trust is a sign of completion. And trust does not mean waiting passively. It means living from the assumption that the inner work is finished. Once you truly grasp that the inner act is the only act, you stop wasting energy trying to change people, situations, and conditions. You change yourself inwardly and everything else must follow. This is not belief, it is function. Creation is already finished in the unseen. You are simply choosing which version to experience. Make the choice inwardly, accept it fully, and the outer world will respond in its own precise, undeniable way. When you live from this understanding, life becomes less about effort and more about alignment, less about struggle and more about selection. And once the inner act is done, the outer act cannot be denied. Time collapses when belief is certain. Why delay ends the moment doubt does. Time is not the obstacle you think it is. It has never been the true reason things take long, arrive late, or seem out of reach. Time is only the visible effect of an invisible condition, uncertainty. Where certainty exists, time shortens. Where doubt lingers, time stretches. This is not metaphorical language, it is an observable law. The speed of results in your life is directly proportional to the level of conviction you hold within. When belief becomes settled, time has no function left to perform. Most people experience time as something external and uncontrollable. They say it will take time. I'm not there yet, or maybe someday. These phrases sound harmless, but they reveal a deeper assumption, that the desired state exists in the future. And the moment something is placed in the future, time is created as a barrier. Time does not delay fulfillment. Belief in delay creates time. Consider this carefully. There are moments in life when things happen instantly. Decisions, realizations, breakthroughs, sudden meetings, unexpected opportunities. In those moments, time seems to vanish. Why? Because there was no inner debate, no wavering, no mental back and forth. Certainty was present even briefly, and time had no role to play. Time exists only where the mind is undecided. It is the space between I want and I know. As long as you remain in wanting, time stretches. The moment you move into knowing, time collapses. This is why people can work on something for years with no result, then suddenly experience change almost overnight. The effort didn't create the shift. The inner decision did. You were taught that patience is required for manifestation, but patience is often misunderstood. True patience is not waiting, it is inner stillness. Waiting is anxious. Stillness is certain. When you are truly certain, you are not counting days. You are not checking progress. You are not asking, is it working? You are living as though the outcome is inevitable, and inevitability dissolves time. Notice how time behaves around things you do not question. You do not worry about whether tomorrow will come. You do not anxiously count the minutes until the sun rises. There is no emotional charge around it. That lack of emotional tension allows time to flow smoothly. Apply the same neutrality to your desire, and you remove resistance. Resistance is what slows things down, not the desire itself. The mind creates delay by constantly revisiting the absence of what it wants. Every time you check, wonder, worry, or analyze, you reaffirm the assumption that it is not here yet. That assumption must be reflected. The outer world cannot contradict the inner agreement. If you are internally saying, why hasn't it happened? The answer must continue to be, because you're still asking. Certainty, on the other hand, ends the conversation. When something is settled in you, you stop talking to yourself about it. You stop negotiating. You stop rehearsing scenarios. You move on. And when you move on internally, life moves forward externally. This is why obsessing over timing is so counterproductive. Asking when is the loudest declaration of doubt. The moment you ask when, you admit you do not believe it is done, and the world responds accordingly by keeping it unfinished. The fastest manifestations occur when the question of time disappears altogether. Certainty is not emotional excitement. Excitement still contains anticipation, and anticipation implies waiting. Certainty is quiet. It is grounded. It feels almost uneventful. That uneventfulness is the signal that the inner work is complete. Once the inner work is complete, the outer world begins arranging itself immediately, even if you cannot see it yet. You must understand that time is not linear from the perspective of consciousness. Events are not created one by one. They already exist as possibilities. Your state selects which sequence you experience. When you change states, you do not create something new, you enter a different timeline. That shift can feel sudden because it is not gradual. It is a change of position, not a slow construction. This is why small inner shifts can create dramatic outer changes. The scale of effort does not match the scale of result because effort is not the cause. State is. The moment you occupy a state where the outcome is assumed, you align with a version of reality where it is already present or rapidly approaching. People often ask, how do I make it happen faster? The question itself reveals the problem. Speed is not achieved by trying to accelerate the process. It is achieved by removing doubt. The more you try to make something happen, the more you reinforce the belief that it hasn't happened yet. Letting go is not giving up, it is letting certainty replace effort. You collapse time by finalizing your decision. Decide that this is done, settled, inevitable. Not emotionally, not loudly, not forcefully, but quietly and firmly. Decision is the end of time. Indecision is the beginning of it. Once a decision is made internally, you will notice a change in your behavior without trying. You stop chasing. You stop overthinking. You stop explaining your desire to others. You become less reactive. These are signs that certainty has taken hold. And as these signs appear, the outer world begins shifting in ways that seem coincidental but are anything but. Delay is never punishment. It is feedback. It shows you where belief is incomplete. Instead of fighting delay, use it as information. Ask yourself, where am I still unsure? Then return to the feeling of already knowing, not hoping knowing. The mind wants guarantees before it relaxes, but the law works in reverse. Relaxation is the guarantee. The moment you relax into certainty, you signal completion, and completion attracts movement. Time is not your enemy, it is your indicator. When things feel slow, it is simply pointing you back to your inner state. Adjust the state and time adjusts automatically. When belief is certain, there is no tension between now and later. Later dissolves into now. The future loses its grip, and what you once thought would take months or years begins moving toward you with surprising speed. This is not because life suddenly becomes generous. It is because you finally stopped contradicting it. The moment doubt ends, time ends with it. And what remains is alignment, motion, and inevitable arrival. Persistence in identity, not action, become the one who has, and reality follows. Most people misunderstand persistence. They believe it means repeating techniques, forcing discipline, or endlessly taking action until something finally gives. But persistence does not belong to behavior, it belongs to identity. You do not persist by doing more. You persist by remaining the same internally even when the outer world has not yet reflected it. This is the final key that determines whether a desire materializes or fades away. Action can be inconsistent and still succeed, but identity cannot waver without consequence. Identity is the story you silently live from. It is not what you say about yourself when you are motivated. It is what you assume when nothing is happening. When people fail, it is rarely because they did not try long enough. It is because they returned again and again to the identity of someone who is still waiting. Waiting feels harmless, but it is a declaration. I am not yet. And life obeys that declaration faithfully. True persistence means you do not return to the old self after a moment of faith. You do not visit certainty and then move back into doubt as your home. You stay. You live from the state that implies fulfillment. You think from it, feel from it, and react from it. Not with effort, but with consistency. Action is unstable because it depends on mood, energy, and circumstance. Identity is stable because it operates automatically. You do not have to remind yourself who you are, you simply are. This is why identity is the real creative force. When identity changes, behavior changes naturally. When behavior is forced without identity shift, it collapses under pressure. People often ask why things appear to work briefly and then fall apart. The answer is simple: the identity shift was temporary. They felt certain for a moment, then went back to identifying as the one who struggles, waits, or lacks. Reality simply followed the dominant state. Persistence in identity means that even when nothing seems to be happening, you do not interpret that as failure. You interpret it as alignment unfolding. Interpretation matters because interpretation reveals identity. The one who believes it is done interprets silence as movement. The one who doubts interprets silence as denial. You must understand that the world tests nothing, it reflects everything. If you return to your old identity under pressure, the reflection will also return. But if you remain loyal to the new self-concept regardless of appearances, the world has no option but to conform. Identity always wins over conditions. Becoming the one who has does not mean pretending outwardly. It means inwardly knowing. It means the inner conversation changes. You stop talking about the desire and start talking from it. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying. You stop needing reassurance. These shifts are subtle but decisive. The person who does not rehearse lack. They do not ask, why hasn't it happened? They ask nothing at all. Questions disappear when identity is stable. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. Persistence in identity also means allowing yourself to feel normal in the fulfilled state. Many people sabotage themselves by constantly recreating emotional highs and lows. They think passion creates results. In reality, calm creates results. Calm means the state has been accepted. Calm means you are no longer trying to convince yourself. When identity is secure, doubt may still pass through the mind, but it does not take root. Thoughts are no longer believed automatically. You observe them without obeying them. This is mastery, not controlling thoughts, but choosing which ones define you. There is a difference between effort and loyalty. Effort is tiring. Loyalty is natural. When you are loyal to an identity, you do not feel like you are working. You feel like you are being yourself. This is why results arrive faster when you stop trying and start being. Persistence does not mean ignoring reality. It means interpreting reality correctly. The present moment is always old news. It is the echo of past assumptions. Judging it as final is the fastest way to repeat it. Seeing it as transitional keeps identity intact. You do not abandon your identity when something seems to go wrong. You do not panic. Panic is a declaration of insecurity. Instead, you return to knowing, this does not change who I am. And because identity has not changed, the outcome must realign. This is the discipline few people master. Not the discipline of routine, but the discipline of self-definition. You define yourself once and return to that definition whenever the mind wanders. The world is remarkably patient. It will wait as long as you waver. It will also move quickly the moment you stop wavering. Speed is not controlled by effort. It is controlled by consistency of self-concept. When you persist in identity, action becomes inspired. You do not force steps, you recognize them. Opportunities feel obvious. Decisions feel natural. Movement feels guided. This is not luck. It is coherence between who you are and what you experience. Becoming the one who has also means releasing the need to talk about the process. Silence strengthens identity. Explanation weakens it. When you explain, you seek validation. When you are secure, validation is unnecessary. The old self will try to reassert itself. Habit is powerful, but habit loses strength when it is not fed. Each time you choose the new identity instead of the old reaction, you weaken the past and strengthen the future. This is the final truth. Persistence is not about time. It is about constancy. One moment of true identity shift outweighs months of forced action. Stay loyal to the self who already has, already knows, already expects alignment. Do not ask when it will happen. Do not ask how it will come. Those questions belong to the old identity. The new identity rests, and as you rest in who you have decided to be, reality, as it always does, follows without resistance.